Hello, my name is Anita Manwani, and welcome to the first premiere of TiE's Golden Globe. This is a series that we have launched to bring to you inspiring stories of young entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs, corporate decision makers, and investors. TiE's mission, as you know, is to foster entrepreneurship. And in Silicon Valley, as the founding chapter, we have been doing this for 30 years. It is my commitment to bring robust and interesting conversations about trending technologies and younger entrepreneurs to our platforms. And today we are delighted to welcome Akash Nigam, young and aspiring entrepreneur, founder of Genies. Genies, as many of you may have known, was the first company in the world of metaverse that made a lot of waves last year when they got $150 million in investment led by private equity firm Silver Lake. Joining him in this conversation is serial successful entrepreneur, Dr. Nickhil Jakatdar. Nickhil has 60 patents to his name. He has a PhD from Berkeley, and his alma mater is Pune. He has also had a successful exit with ViewClip, and is now the CEO and founder of GenePath Diagnostics, which provides test kits and assays for early detection of the genetic disorders, infectious diseases, and cancer. Nickhil also has another first, which is he was the first investor in Akash's company. So over to you, Nickhil, to take on this conversation.
So we have Akash with us. I think Anita's done a great job of giving a very brief but intriguing background about Akash. And I think over the next 1 hour, we'll try and unravel all the different layers that make Akash Akash. You know, as Anita said, I'm Nickhil Jakatdar. I'm the CEO of GenePath Diagnostics, but I'm also a card-carrying member of the ANFC, the Akash Nigam fan club. and we're going to have a fun conversation today. And in the middle of all that fun, I hope we uncover some of the intriguing, interesting, and amazing aspects of what makes Akash Akash. I've had the pleasure of knowing Akash and seeing his journey at pretty close quarters over the last 10 years or so. With that, let's get started. So, Akash, first of all, I would have loved to do this in person, but we'll take whatever we get. I think it'll be fun and interesting for people to hear the origin story, right? The first 15, 16 years of your life, who were the influencers? What influenced you? Any interesting anecdotes that helped shape you into who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I was the first card holder, I think, of the NJFC. And so it's, I mean, like, it depends, like, you know, depending on the context of the audience, you try to figure out when somebody asks, like, the genesis of the story, like, how far back do you go? Because you could start back, like, when I was like 10 or 9 or 8 years old. I'll start with you, though. Yeah, I'll start with you. You know, I got my first internship ever in high school, and it was at your company, ViewClip. And that's like the first time I felt like I had freedom to be able to do whatever I wanted, right? So I was given the reins of being able to basically skin your product for a youthful audience. And it was my first take at entrepreneurship, the most fun I've ever had that summer. So fast forward, I go to college, trying every single app in the world. All of them suck. Nobody wants to download the app. But we're devoting literally our entire summers to building this. And I'm doing it with 2 buddies. And every single summer I come back and I start pitching anybody from my neighborhood, anybody that's willing to listen, to be able to give me my initial funding so I can start a business. I went probably 0 for 182 in the first 182 or so. And then I came to your offices and you were number 183. And it was actually very refreshing to come back after almost whatever it had been, 6 years, go back to my former boss and say, hey, listen, this is an idea that I want to pursue and so forth. And I remember just being so passionate for an hour or so. And at the very end, I asked for $1 million. And you're like, Akash, I have no idea what you just said at all. And I'm not giving you $1 million, but if you want $50,000 and you think that it's going to do something with yourself, then go for it. And I remember getting in the car and peeling out of your offices. And I went back on the highway, and I was at Michigan at the time. And I just called my friend Jake, who's my co-founder today. And I was screaming in the car, going absolutely ballistic. I was like, dude, we got funded $50,000. We're going to be able to build Facebook. We can do anything that we want. And halfway through the phone call, I was like, hey, Jake, I got to go. There's a cop pulling me over. And I got pulled over by a cop, and I had to tell the cop that I just got my first check for funding and so forth. So the Genesis story starts all the way back from there. But then really, if you go to the next point of origin, truly when we felt like the business actually had some real legs outside of just kind of a passion.
Actually, Akash, can I interrupt you? And I just want to add a little bit to the story, because it's still one of the most fun stories I tell people about, this whole experience. And just for the audience, I want to add a little bit of color to what you said. Number one was the internship. You were after your junior year and before your senior year of high school, you come as an intern. And what fascinated me about you in that period was the fact that you were given this project, you did it with a lot of, with a lot of passion and all of that, but you did a lot of very intriguing things, which gave me the first sign of this spark that I saw. One of the things that you did was, I'd asked you to get, I think, 1,000 consumers to be signed up over the summer. That was your success metric for this service you were creating. And one way you did it was you actually used your own money to buy an iPhone, and you advertised that iPhone for anyone who consumes a lot of content. And I think you spread the word in your school, and a lot of people watched content. You hit your 1,000 membership goal, but you also displayed some cool creativity that helped you get there. So that was one thing I remember, because when you came back a few years later to have the conversation about funding, and I also remember telling you, Akash, you just spoke for an hour and I have no idea what you said. So on paper, that should mean I should not be funding you. But that story stayed with me. That, here's a guy who has the creativity, the perseverance to figure things out. And I can't say I put that funding because of the idea or the concept, but I can definitely say I put it because you were just the type of person that anybody should bet on, and people did, obviously.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, that's everybody at this office today, people that have just been hired this year know of this story, right? And it goes back, we can get into it later. Obviously, we have a venture fund, but we've taken a lot of the philosophies that we were taught early on, such as this, and we've been able to extrapolate that and start to implement it in our own virtues of funding as well, right? So anytime, it sounds cliche, but anytime that we make an investment, the first thing we look at is generally, are they in the right area? But really, who are the individuals behind this, right? And if the individuals show a spark of uniqueness and then also diligence, and are people that are passionate about the problem that they're solving, you want to be able to place your bets, and it's a volume game. I don't think you thought that maybe it would go anywhere. Maybe you did, who knows? I appreciated the fact that you had gotten obviously extra diligence of getting to know me and so forth, which was great. But truthfully, I don't know where I would have been if that moment hadn't gone that way, right? I already told you, I was 0 for 183 at this point, and 182, that's 183rd. And all of a sudden that gave us the lift and the jump and the confidence that some people just need in order to get started. So I appreciate that.
One other thing I remember also is I'd given you 2 conditions, Akash, for that funding. One was you needed your dad to sign off about the fact that, how are you going to deal with college and an entrepreneurship? And I know that's a whole story in itself. But the second is for you to get the remaining $950,000. Right? And I remember you came back maybe a week or 2 weeks later and said, I got it. And I remember asking you, how did you manage to convince all these people? Maybe they got your story and I didn't. And your answer to me was, oh, I really didn't get into the story much. I just told them that you invested. And so.
Yeah, that was good indication. No, 100%. We ended up circling the next 950K. I remember this though. I remember being like, those 950K were soft circled. And the way that you had also committed was in this caveated way. And I was like, you know what? I just need to make sure that we can roll these checks in I want to make sure that this is known as like a rolling close. Got yours done. And I don't think the next 950K really closed until maybe like 6 months later or so. But people use you as a strong indication. And going off to your first point, which I think parlays into like the next key origin, was, yeah, my dad was like, look, listen, like, I'm glad that you're passionate about something in entrepreneurship, but you need to be able to tackle college at the same time. And you would put that problem in front of me, make sure that you can tackle both. I said, well, no, I can't. And so I ended up, that was kind of like the answer to number one. And, you know, kept building on this product for the next like 2-3 years, scrappy, made the 50,000, $1 million or so, last that time. And then senior year, it started taking off. I was 8 credits away from graduating. It was so ironic because I was a declared triple major, right? So I had done computer science, econ, and financial math. The ironic thing is that I stayed every single summer to try to complete more and more courses to make sure I could graduate on time, only to literally drop out at the very end with 8 credits left. And I remember how I dropped out too. It was a product called Blend, which was a college exclusive social network with a few e-commerce gimmicks here and there. And it's basically this concept of you share photos to a theme of the day, you collect likes, which became your social currency, and you can use these likes to be able to redeem different gift cards and so forth from different brand partners that we were partnering with. And we came out with one, you know, I went to Michigan, our arch rival is Ohio State. We didn't have that much money left in the bank, right? So like we wanted to allocate all of our money towards engineering and product and building, and we had zero for marketing. We've kept this cornerstone till this day, but we feel like the best form of marketing is when you pretend like you have $0 in the bank. And so we sat there, and it was a college exclusive social network, but we came out with an announcement saying it's available for all college students unless you're from Ohio State. If you download the app from Ohio State, we're just going to start deleting your accounts. And we started doing that. And that spread like wildfire, right? New York Times started writing about it. We're on the Bill O'Reilly show. We're all over in the media. I remember my mom calling me because I always joked about college, right? And it always felt like a joke. I was like, yeah, I'm going to drop out one day anyways. I'm going to do this, and this, just because I like getting a rile out of my parents. And my mom called me. I was studying in the B school. And she was like, Akash, like, I see all this news, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you do, please just finish. I was like, Mom, I got you. Next day, went to the admin office, got my withdrawal papers, got out of there, came back home. My dad was pissed. Like, my dad was furious, wouldn't talk to me for a while. I remember this this very vivid memory. I came to my house. I went to the bottom of the stairs. I had my 2 bags with me, and my dad came to the top of the staircase, and he just stood there and he was like, hi, Akash. And my dad's like a very loving individual. Like, you know him, of course. He's a very loving, very passionate person. But he was beyond furious, right? It's like, and look, I mean, like, especially at an event like this, everybody here can relate to this. Like, I'm from a very, traditional Indian background, right? At least back then, it was more traditional, right? Hardcore academic, that's number 1 on your list. Like, that is the way to be able to pursue life. And I had always been a little different in that sense. Like, I remember even in, a small tangent, I remember in school, anytime they would give an assignment, they would say, like, I could be in like 6th grade, and they would give an assignment. They'd be like, this is the paper that you have to fill out. This is an essay that you have to do in order to cover this moment in history. Like, we were in like, US history or whatever it was. And instead of doing the essay, because I didn't want to be like everybody else, I would just get a video camera. I'd put on like a sports jacket. I would pretend like I was Dan Rather, and I would just give I would complete the assignment, but I would do it in the lens of something unique and creative. And I would say, like, I'd pretend like I was a news anchor covering this event. So, my parents always knew that it was like, I didn't want to fall in the exact governance of society, but this one was really breaking the straw of the camel's back. And so dropped out of school, and that was a really harsh moment for the whole family. I remember the Indian community is obviously a very tight-knit community, and they talk a lot, of course. And so I remember feeling, I went through a pretty bad spell of depression, right? Just because I knew that my parents were embarrassed, right? Like, they were like, my kids dropped out of school. Like, oh shit, has he lost it completely? I think my sister was embarrassed too. And like, they'll say like it was incidental, but like, you can tell from body language, and I don't blame them, right? Like, I think even for a guy that has dropped out of school, if my son or my daughter wanted to drop out of school, I'm going to want to go in the most protective, conservative mode as possible in order to ensure the best path for them. And I think my parents were doing the same thing. And so that was a really tough period. Lost all my friends in college. All my friends thought I was psycho. They're like, oh, look, he thinks he's going to be Zuckerberg. And then you get back into your hometown and nobody's there because they're all in college. So you're completely by yourself. Your family doesn't support what you're doing. Then you have your college friends that don't support what you're doing. Then your hometown friends are all gone to their own colleges. So we actually got a small room attached to a mosque in San Jose for $400 a month, where myself and my co-founders would just sit there and grind day in and day out. And eventually, it obviously transpired. But yeah, that was a really tough period.
Yeah, no, and those are truly the unique experiences that made you who you were. And beyond that, you start Genies, you have a lot of pivots, a lot of repositioning. Talk us through that period.
Yeah, so dropping out of school was tough because it was our first time experiencing the highs of highs and the lows of lows really fast, right? So Blend, which was the predecessor to Genies, it was the talk of the town. It was the talk of colleges. It was the talk of the media. We ended up securing funding, 2.7 mil, and it was from good people. It was like it was from NEA, it was from Foundation. It was good firms. And very quickly after that, we saw our retention go away. And you got a sense like, oh shit, like this is less of something that's sustainable long-term, more of something that was maybe a nice fad or something that was novel. And back then, the social media was relatively new, right? Like outside of Facebook, like Instagram just came on market, right? And so for that reason, there was less data around like what's here as a sticky app and what's here as something that could be sustainable for the long term and so forth. And so it kind of went underneath everybody's noses, and we went through our first pivot. Then we went through our second pivot. Then we went through our third pivot, and you're just trying everything, right? Really cheap, fail fast, like different variants of kind of like the core of what we thought we were hitting. And in hindsight, I feel like everything that I've built in my entire life has always been around optimizing for internet behavior. A big reason why is like most people think I'm a very extroverted person. In reality, I'm very introverted, specifically in high school and college. I was having a very difficult time kind of becoming one with my identity or figuring out who exactly Akash was, right? And sometimes I would overcompromise by being extra loud in a room or whatever. And I'm actually a very, I think I was, I think I have an extroverted side to me, but a lot of the time, I felt like my actual self as an introvert and being able to express myself authentically online. And so all the apps we're coming out with were either photo messaging, video messaging, chat bot, something to be able to elicit better online connectivity and foster those relationships. And then the concept of an avatar came about. And it was kind of like our last ultimate pivot. I even remember saying to the guys, I was like, hey, listen, like we don't have that much money left in the bank, first of all. And I feel like this feels like a really good shot to take. It feels like the right one. And it speaks to me in a way that, it's an artistic manifestation of your emotions, your feelings, and your thoughts that text, photo, and video just can't justify. And it just feels like, we've always been consistently obsessed with culture and obsessed with the way that humans communicate. And this felt like something very powerful. It felt like something that was on the brink of getting taken outside of gaming and brought to the social and cultural world for the very first time. This is back in 2016. And so we bet the whole company, everything that we wanted to do on this concept of avatars and the ability to be able to communicate with like-minded individuals in the form of an avatar. And in kind of predicting in our minds that we believe that the future of the internet will become more and more virtual, past just a tabloid and past just your phone. It's going to be something, or past a tablet and your phone, something far more immersive. And we got really embedded in the concept of AR and really embedded in the concept of how avatars play a key role, and really started to study who Gen Z is today. And it ended up panning out in a way that we didn't really imagine. We obviously, we got really strong initial traction when we made our debut in 2017. And we were
Akash, can I just ask you to explain for everybody's benefit, what was it? What was the offering? What was the consumer value proposition of what you were building?
It was the ability to create a high fidelity avatar that was taking a very different approach than any of the incumbents, and there were very few at the time, incumbents that were on market, where people viewed them, people were trying to tackle the avatar concept as, I want to make something that looks just like me. And that's really missing the actual core product nerve of what an avatar is supposed to be. If you want to make something just like you, might as well just use a profile picture. But the point of an avatar is, how can I take the insides of myself, my personality, and then manifest it in something new? And so we wanted to give everybody the tools to create an aspirational version of themselves, not something that was one-to-one of their physical selves. And we wanted to make it with a cultural context, so you can meet other like-minded individuals via your avatar, via cultural events. And it was a mobile app at the time, and obviously has transitioned since. And there's been so many different products of now the business that we have today, which we can get into in a second. But initially, that was the core concept. And we had no intention of it, quote unquote, blowing up in the very beginning, but it obviously did.
And so you got this concept, you started seeing the traction, and then can you talk about how has it evolved to this point in time? How has the business model come about? What are the observations you've had along the way?
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. It's been awesome. It's been a crazy ride though. Like, I'll tell you, like, every single every single high is coupled with a dramatic low, and they normally all level out. So we've definitely developed thick skin throughout this period. And I feel like the 183 people that we were pitching when we were freshmen in college, and all the apps that we came out with, dozens of apps that failed, have definitely built us for these moments, so that, we might be in our 20s and 30s and so forth, but we definitely feel like we've been in the game for a long enough time where we feel almost like, veterans to an extent, at least in terms of being able to build thickness of the skin that can go through all these moments. So the way that, like back then when we initially released that product, we were in San Francisco and we had just moved to LA. We got out of San Francisco because we were just like, we just need a fresh start. We need like to get back to kind of our core sentiment. And we were just 6 people out of a WeWork in Hollywood, and we're just grinding out of there. And then this started becoming the talk of town. And then eventually we moved into a small room above a taco shop, which became kind of like a well-known concept for this company. We actually have like drawings of our taco shop in the hallway here now too. But that became like a pretty infamous setting, because people that started to become attracted by the product were actually all celebrities. We had no concept of why celebrities wanted to use our product. We had no concept of what CAA even was at the time, but it actually kind of made sense. And it went back to our core concept, where people want to be able to express themselves in a way that their physical selves can't. And celebrities are always underneath the microscope. They're always scrutinized. They're never able to really authentically express themselves. And all of a sudden, they found this avenue to be able to create this narrative of their true side. Everybody else thinks that it's like an alternate personality, but it was really an outlet for them, right? So fast forward, like X amount of years, we ended up getting, we had 99% celebrity avatar market share, meaning that, 99% of the time when a celebrity was using an avatar, it almost always was a genie. And they would use it for things like moralizing key moments like music videos and songs and different moments of their life. And they almost created these like Disney narratives on their social media. Then the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, that accelerated everything, right? All of a sudden, nobody could meet up physically. And the only place that they can go to is an avatar, right? So all of a sudden, entertainment's dead. So you have the Migos, all of a sudden they're like, shit, we can't host a concert. Okay, my Genie avatar is going to go do it in Oculus. So that's when we saw traction just go absolutely through the roof. We ended up signing deals with Universal Music Group and then Warner Music Group to become the official avatar and digital goods provider for everybody underneath those umbrellas. And since then, I think the celebrity business has been immensely solidified. And now we've obviously we secured this funding. We had brought Bob Iger onto our board as well. And it was a key moment where I think everybody in the arena is starting to see social reborn again. And there's this strong belief that the next Facebook moment is going to be a network of avatars. And so we want to be the key and premier provider of that. And so the business today is quite simple. Like, right, we have the celebrity business that continues to thrive the way that it has been. And then right now we're in the process of being able to release this for everybody. And so far, it's been available for specifically people between the ages of 16 and then 22. We have like a limited beta, which is going quite nicely. And then this summer, we're going to open it up to everybody. But I think like the learnings throughout this and kind of like the trends of the space have really been like, look, we see these two trends being perpetuated amongst the consumer audience. One is this earnest desire to exist virtually. That one's been more obvious. But the second one, not as obvious, is this earnest desire to be free, to not be beholden to the incumbents, to not be beholden to Facebook or to Twitter or to YouTube. People are starting to realize that specifically the culture and the kids are starting to realize, hold on, like if we all walked away today, TikTok doesn't even exist. YouTube doesn't even exist. All the crowdsourced social platforms, and they want to be rewarded fairly, both monetarily and then even by status. And so like we want to be at the intersection of those two trends. If those two trends intersect, we believe that the mobile apps of the future of the internet are going to be avatar ecosystems. And we want to create the tools that allow everybody to create their own avatar ecosystem.
So Akash, you started with celebs and the model with them was you would make avatars of them and then you would represent them to the agencies?
Yeah, so we would not directly represent them, but we would represent their avatar, right? So like
right.
Justin Bieber's avatar, like if somebody wanted to use his avatar, now we've relinquished control and ownership. So he has full ownership of his avatar. He can do whatever he wants and so forth. But in the very beginning, it was like, if you want to activate Justin Bieber's avatar for a music video, for a performance, for a meet and greet, for an announcement. And let's say Justin just like, look, I mean, like he's a physical person. He can't be at two places at once. So there was one aspect of it where he's able to express his authentic self. But then the second aspect of it is he can be at multiple places at once, right? And his fans, Gen Z specifically, that have been immersed in gaming in all of these worlds, and we see these trends continue to build, where they become more and more infatuated with their digital self, that has continued to thrive so that they almost fall more in love with Justin Bieber's avatar than Justin Bieber himself, right? It's a new side of his personality. And even empirically by the numbers in a lot of advertisements, right? If somebody was doing an endorsement of like Pepsi, or they were doing an endorsement of Doritos or whatever it was, and they use their avatar instead of their physical self, it was actually pretty interesting to see how the avatar sometimes would outperform the physical person entirely. So all of a sudden you cut the actual human out of the equation completely. So that's how it started with celebrities specifically.
Yeah. And, I want to take one of the questions that I think Venkatesh has put up, which is the fact that you got celebrities to invest, the fact that you got a sports league to be exclusive with you, all of that, I think I know the answer, but let me ask it in any case. There is this big hype about Web 3.0, and I want to talk about that. But do you think these folks came in because of the hype, or do you think they saw some of these engagement metrics that you spoke about that led them to say, hold on, this is not just hype, this is real?
I mean, they first came on because it was a point blank need. It was like, Justin, you're not literally able to perform given the rules of the government right now with the pandemic. The only way for you to continue the way that you were was through a virtual setting. And a prerequisite to doing anything virtually outside of yourself on a Zoom, which doesn't feel as engaging or as fantastical or as special, is an avatar. So it came from a need in the very beginning, and I feel like people could see themselves really truly just expressing themselves. Then after they saw the engagement and the numbers, it was kind of like proof in the pudding. But truthfully, like when you talk to kids specifically that use it today, they just love the fact that they can, you don't have any say when you're born on this earth in the way that you look, right? Like I didn't have any, otherwise I'd be 6'5", right? I had no say in the way that I was constructed. And an avatar is the first time that after you've developed your personality that you get to reimagine yourself on your own terms, right? And so I think people being able to go through that process is really engaging, it's therapeutic, it's fun. And kids that, like back in the day, gaming was considered weird and also, or underground rather, a niche. And internet friends were considered kind of creepy almost. That narrative has been flipped on its head. We have kids in and out of this office all the time. You ask them, I always ask them, I was like, so talk to me about this, and blah, blah, whatever. And then I'm like, how many friends have you made on the internet? Or they bring up somebody. I'm like, oh, where'd you meet them? Oh, on TikTok. Oh, on Instagram. Oh, on here. And so like people like they want to be able to meet other like-minded individuals without the constraints of the physical world and also without the reality of maybe who they physically appear as. They want people to base them on their personality and their inner selves. And so an avatar gives you that mask to be able to do that in a safe and also authentic way.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating to me in what you were just describing, Akash, is 10, 20 years back, if you tried to portray a physical or an image of you that's not you, it was called creepy.
Yeah.
Today, it is, hey, if that's your inner self and that's authentic, it's your authentic inner self, then it's not creepy, then it's authentic, right? And so it's sort of the world has moved. And so in that context, Akash, what does Web 3.0 mean to you?
You know, everybody talks about it as if it's crypto. And it's funny, like when we started talking about Web3 and so forth, people would put me on a group chat with another individual, be like, hey, I want you to meet Akash. He's my crypto guy. And I was like, dude, the first time I owned cryptocurrency was like 4 months ago. I was like, I'm not your crypto guy by any means. But like, you know, and that was probably one of the most annoying things that kept coming out in the headlines, like, you know, Genies, like, whatever, like the crypto, you know, X, Y, and Z avatar. And we would just get conflated with, of course, all of the crypto hype and NFTs and so forth. And I had to always consistently steer the media and even just like internal comms being, we are a human communications company first and foremost, right? Like we are a social communications company. We believe that avatars are the next evolution in the way that humans do communicate and allow you to be more present over time. So the way that we've defined Web3 is really the intersection of those two trends that I just talked about, the virtual trend and then the freedom trend. And we feel like an internet era is always dictated by its computing device. So take like Web 1, for example. It's not like the internet was born and they were like, oh shit, let's go make a computer. Then Web 2 comes along. Oh, the App Store was born. Oh, let's go make a phone. It's always dictated by the computing device first. And the computing device is, at the end of the day, when you really boil it down, it's trying to make all the pre-internet experiences that you love more and more accessible, right? Like, you know, like what culture does and how culture behaves hasn't really changed in a couple hundred years. And so Web3 to me, I think is going to be dictated by AR. I think it's going to be AR glasses that will be the first on market. You know, it's funny, whenever Oculus gets on, or Meta gets on stage and they start talking about Oculus, everybody listens. They're like, okay, great. Like, excited to learn more and we'll observe. But at the end of the day, that is a software company talking about hardware at their DNA. When Apple gets on stage, it's a completely different beast. That is a hardware company, one of the best. They've only failed like once over the past 20 years. It was when they released the Apple Newton, which was like a Palm Pilot. Otherwise, what's fascinating about Apple is that they wait, they watch everybody make all their plays. They have researchers that have been there for decades, and then they release. And so their MR glasses are imminent, right? They're coming out in the next 1 to 2 years. They're priced high. They're at $3,000, but they want to build up the developer community first. I think they're going to release their AR glasses probably in 2025, 2026. And I think it's going to get adopted. I think it's going to get widely adopted. And when that happens, that's when we're in Web3. It's the concept of, okay, now I'm existing virtually. Apple's already getting forced by the EU right now to allow everybody else to have their own app store, which circumvents the 30%. So that's tapping into freedom. And when you have those two trends intersect, that's going to be our new world, right? It's going to take a while for it to adopt. It's not like mobile phone is going to be completely done with. The mobile experience is still going to be integral with what you're doing with your glasses. But that's when we're going to start to see real significant change. And so Web3 to us is when that moment happens, the birth of the avatar ecosystem store, which allows you to virtually hang for the very first time.
And one of the big things, first of all, I think that explanation was excellent. Thank you. I learned a lot. But one of the big things that happened in the life of the company is having Bob Iger join. I remember reading when Bob Iger left Disney, and of course he's back at Disney now, but when he left Disney, one of the big questions on everyone's mind was, what is he going to do next? And the only thing he did was join your board and invest his own money. And so was it a matching of visions? He saw the world the same way that you saw it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is one of the biggest things that happened for most of us about.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was right after we raised our Series B. And, you know, at that point, like you're always trying to, at the end of the day, like, you know, the concept of Genies is actually quite complex, right? Because to the average person that's not like actually in the trenches day in, day out, you have the space is brand new. You have Web3. The product avatars is completely different. Then you have this audience, Gen Z, completely different and new. So it's a lot to kind of absorb and tackle at the same time. And so you always try to figure out verbiage that quickly can get people in the right ballpark of what you're trying to do. And then if somebody wants to engage further, then you go a little bit deeper. So the term that I was using back then, because all the celebrities were kind of creating these news stories and so forth and narratives on their social media channel using their avatars, I kept saying, we are the decentralized Disney. And I said that like, I must have said it a million times. And Genies was obviously catching a lot of fire in 2020 and 2021, at least our initial fire. And we were in the headlines every week, like just coming out with new things and whatever. And, you know, Mary Meeker, who's also on our board, led that round. And she was like, hey, do you want to meet Bob Iger? He's interested in what's happening over at Genies and blah, 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 and whatever. And I actually have a pretty funny story about this. I was like, yeah, awesome. That sounds amazing. She was like, okay, cool. Intro is going to be coming over the next couple of weeks. Now, during that time, especially during the pandemic, was the busiest time of my entire life, like the busiest. I actually was living in the office, right? So I cut out of my lease here in Santa Monica because I didn't want to pay $2,500 a month for rent. And I moved into the office because nobody else could come to the office. It was actually, I regret doing this. It was quite unhealthy, but it was what it was. I put my bed up on the third floor and I would run downstairs to a conference room. I would do calls. I would do it till late. I had Asia calls and I'd go back upstairs and I'd do it every single day again. And I was in back-to-backs. We were grinding. We finally thought we had lightning in a bottle. So there was like no stopping, right? I'm always on back-to-backs. And my assistant, she knows that during that time, I was like, I'm not taking any meetings. And if I am going to take a meeting, they have to meet me in my area, which was in Venice. I'm not traveling for it, but to always Google the name to figure out, like, is this somebody worth at least talking to Akash about to figure out if we should go travel to them, depending on their value that they could maybe add to the business and so forth. But we were just so busy. So I was in back-to-backs or whatever. And Mary introduced me to Bob and Juliet from Bond as well. And Bob was using an alias. And so my assistant, McKenna, she Googles the name, she doesn't find anything. And meanwhile, I'm on calls, right? So I'm not seeing any of this go down. And she's going back and forth or whatever. I come out of my meeting and I have like a 10-minute break. I'm going downstairs and I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, look, this looks like it's teed up like it's probably Bob. His alias shows like a hint that it could be him. But McKenna Googled and she didn't find anything. So Bob, you know, had responded immediately on the thread. He was like, awesome to meet you, Akash, blah, 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 whatever. Happy to meet anytime. Let me know where it works for you. McKenna responds, she goes, Akash can meet, and this is like back in July. Akash can meet August 25th at 3 p.m. at this local shop. Otherwise, he can't meet for another month, and he can meet you the week after, or he can meet you the month after. And my heart sank. I was like, oh my God. And I go to the next email and he says, no problem, let's do it. So when I met him at a coffee shop, I was like, I'm so sorry, first of all, like that is not the way that we wanted that to go down. And we quickly built a rapport for the next 6 months. We actually made sure to really get to know each other, do a lot of product conversations. And he was like, this is, you know, I have full belief in the company. I have full belief in the team. I have full belief in the vision. He loves this vision. And yeah, we ended up bringing it on board. But I can't stress enough, like the first 6 months of us being disciplined, because there was an opportunity. There was a conversation at the very beginning. Hey, should I jump on your board? Do you want me to, whatever? And we were like, no, let's get to know each other for 6 months. And either you're going to hate me at the end of the 6 months, or we're going to fall in love even more. And fortunately, the latter ended up happening. And yeah, he was instrumental.
That's amazing. So, you know, I want to bring up one question that's come up in the audience questions. What is the impact of ChatGPT-like technologies on your tech? Where do you see them converging?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think generative AI is like just really, really, really intriguing right now, right? And you kind of have to be, you know, I go back to what I was saying in the very beginning, where like, even though, you know, a majority of the staff is in their 20s or 30s or whatever, and a lot of people, this is like the first job as well, first or second job. You know, we feel like vets because we've been through so many cycles. And, you know, we lived through the chatbot cycle. We lived through like a bunch of different trends that were really, really hot, and they never really actually went somewhere. Now, I feel like this is going to be different this time around because there's actually real steam and real legs, but you have to be careful not to just introduce something just for the sake of the headlines or just for the sake of the trend or what's hot or so forth. You actually have to figure out if it adds value. Now, the cool thing is that we have talked about AI and ML elements in the way that you can generate your avatar and also generate different things that could accessorize your avatar or improve the personality of your avatar, just with different verbiage and semantics. So without revealing too much, this summer, you'll start to see some of these features that we've been working on for the past 2.5 years start to come out. But I mean, like, what OpenAI has been doing has been incredible, but it's incredibly expensive too, right? People don't realize they've had to raise billions of dollars to create and own and host your own data set is like absurdly expensive. It's a very, very quick way to burn all of your cash if you're not very exact and intentional in the way that you want to be able to use it.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. This story has been crazy. You've lived a crazy life the last 10 years and maybe even before that, but the 10 years I know and the 10 years you described has been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, only some of which we spoke about, but you have also been very public about your challenges with mental health, dealing with all these ups and downs. And if I didn't love you enough before, I loved even more after I saw you do that. So, I think there is a tendency to, try to look perfect and all, and you've never succumbed to that. Can you talk a little bit about, what that journey has been like for you and what made you want to be public about it?
Yeah. I mean, look, super, super hard combo to have. I think it really hit me at its apex, probably 2 points. One, when I dropped out of school, that was the start of it all. I mean, subconsciously it had always been affecting me, but really deeply was when I dropped out of school. And then another time was in 2020, when I finally was a little bit more alone with my thoughts, right? And when your thoughts wander, you can get more in depth about what's bothering you, where are some of those scars that remain, and where are ways that you want to be able to improve and evolve. And this was back before it also, there weren't like a lot of conversations at this point in 2019 and 2020 about coming out with depression and anxiety and so forth. And so it was kind of foreign territory. There wasn't like a precedent. Now, what's awesome to see is that a lot of people have been starting to socialize that topic. But back when I was coming out with it, there wasn't like a playbook. It was like, oh shit, like, do you actually want to do this? Do you think this could? I was scared. I was like, we just raised our Series B. Mary Meeker has joined the board. Rick Yang has obviously been on the board for a while too, and we're starting to scale for the first time and so forth. And you do have these thoughts. Will it be considered weak? Will they think like, oh shit, he's not up for the task? Should we replace him out of the gates just to make sure that we can carry this company in a strong footing? And I just kind of had this moment where it's like, I want to be authentic to myself. I feel like it will make me stronger if I can truly wear everything that I have on the inside on my sleeves and be able to, and look, like, for the people that love me, which I love you too, like people like yourself, will accept me and even further. And the people that don't like me, they'll reject me. And at least I can get that type of cancerous thought wave out of my life, right? I can start to, it's a good filtering process to an extent. And I wanted to do it at a time when things were going really, really well, to show people that success does not equate to happiness, right? That sounds cliche, but truthfully, in that moment, it's very easy to suppress all of those feelings, but I wanted to come out and be public and have like a forum and a stage to be able to talk about it. And so, a lot of stuff to unravel about, again, this is like I think it's a good event to talk about this in, but a lot of like the tradition of an academic Indian, true hardcore household, I think in today's world, it's outdated and outplayed. And it actually, especially in the States, it doesn't normally manifest itself well. You find yourself always seeking the approval of your parent. You're on this infinite hamster wheel if you go down that cycle, right? So like, let's say for the people that do go to MIT and Harvard, they become like #1 doctors and so forth. And those people, I bet my entire life, still feel beholden to some type of approval in the world that isn't their own, right? In some way. And of course, there's the exceptions, but from what I've seen from my sample size, and I've had a pretty decently large sample size, at least in the way that I've conversed with other people within the India network, it normally doesn't play in the favor of happiness. And so for me, like, I kind of had that self-realization that for me to be happy, I needed to be authentic and I needed to be vulnerable. And then a more vulnerable conversation normally elicits to better relationships, which normally leads to a more open world and so forth, right? And so it was a trying time. I came out with it. It came out in a Forbes piece. I did an exclusive with Forbes, and it shocked a lot of people, right? Most people thought, like I said, that I'm like I'm an extrovert, that very happy all the time, you know, whether it's at work, whether it's on the weekends, it doesn't matter, like consistently always happy. So it was a shock to all my friends. It was a shock to everybody at work. It was a huge shock to my family. They only found out, they literally found out from a headline. I did not have a conversation with them really before. I messaged them the night before saying, hey, there's going to be an article that comes out tomorrow that I'm going to want you to read. Keep an eye out. And look, like my parents are awesome. My family's awesome. And so they actually, I mean, my mom's like an absolute saint. She got on a plane that day and like flew out and came out to LA. And we had like a really special weekend. And it just brought our family, I think, way closer. I think dropping out of school, you know, was like a really eye-opening experience for them, right? Like on one hand, they thought their kid was maybe just going to go off the rails and, you know, like he's completely psycho too. Now it actually was, it was considerably a good path to actually pursue. It made me the happiest. And we ended up, look, even if it wasn't a success, right? And knock on wood, nothing's ever guaranteed, but even if it wasn't a success, I have zero regrets. It's like, think about how much personally I've evolved as a human. And that's really how you boil down life at the end of the day, is like, how are you as a human? How happy do you feel as a human? And it really comes down to the experiences you have with the relationships you make. And this has been the best experience I've ever had. And the relationships I've made along the way are lifelong, right? They're like literally like trench warfare relationships. I know every single inkling of my emotion and body. And so that was painful. I encourage anybody, if there is suffering from any type of anxiety or depression, to talk about it. Because like the one thing that I learned when I came about mine was, so many people are suffering from this, especially from our internet generation, right? Where it's very easy to say things on the internet. There's a good side of the internet, which is what we think is the good fight. Hey, avatars are a secure way to meet other like-minded individuals that are not based on their physical appearance and so forth. Then there's the dark side of the internet, which is trolls, people that will say anything that they can because they have the protection behind a keyboard and so forth. And so, you know, I'm happy that this Gen Z is the most, I think, mental health aware generation that there is. They've socialized the topic. They understand kind of the negative consequences that could come from it. And I just hope that it continues.
Yeah, no, I applaud you for this. I think it's something all of us can learn from. Transparency, authenticity. They'll always serve you well and serve all of us well. So really amazing. And I know your parents and your family, and they're all amazing. And so I'm not surprised that they took it the way they did and they reacted the way they did. So it's really something all of us can learn from. Yeah, I want to move to a slightly different set of topics. The 49ers.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
So you have been, I mean, I remember once you telling me that you probably read more about the 49ers on a daily basis than probably many of their own analysts do.
Easily. We were having a joke. Me and my buddies were like, we should start a podcast. I feel like it would get pretty popular pretty quickly. I mean, like the 49ers, I mean, there's a few things that I care about in life. There's Genies, there's my family, and then there's football. And football is, I mean, you want to talk about, you know, there's two things that I never miss. And I don't move my schedule around for, and they both actually have the same outcome. One is my therapy session that I have every single Thursday at 8 a.m. Nothing will ever take over that session. And then two, which also serves as therapy for me, is when the Niners are playing on Sunday at 1 p.m., I do not miss a game. And it's the most present that you can ever feel, right? And I feel like it's very similar to entrepreneurship in the sense that you're chasing this golden, since I've been alive on earth, the Niners have not won a Super Bowl. You know, my dad tells me all these amazing stories of Joe Montana and Steve Young and whatever. And so I sit there at the age of 3 and 4. I've watched every single game for the past 30 years straight. And they get so close every single time and they just fall flat. But it's been awesome. And we actually have a rule at the company. So I actually offer 2 things for every single new employee on my personal dime, for every single employee that starts here. One is I give you a free nutritional exam, right? I'm a big believer in nutrition and health and sound mind and sound body and so forth. And the second thing is you can go to the 49ershop.com and you buy something. It's not even you can. It's like strongly encouraged, borderline mandated to buy something on my dime up to $50. And when we're in playoffs, I gave you a bonus of another item that you could buy for $50. And so it's funny because we have so many people that we've hired from Seattle, and we've just converted so many Seahawk fans into Niners fans. It's been incredible. And this last year, we all went. I actually took the entire company. We all went to a Niners game here at the Rams. So it took 100 people in buses, all decked out in Niners, took over the field. It was, I mean, I think that will go down as probably top five lifetime memories. It was incredible.
I know you only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to talk about a couple of quick things. One, your sister Sonia is herself an entrepreneur, and you got the chance to be investor number one for her. So give us a 30-second view on that. There's a chance to pitch Sonia's company.
Yeah, so I mean, Sonia's incredible, right? So it's funny, Sonia and I are similar in so many ways, and then we're different in many ways too. And where we're different, she's normally far better and excels in far better capabilities than myself. And so, you know, for me, like if there was investing as a brother to support, but look, at the end of the day, I'm a business guy, and I was like, I'm here to make some money. So like, whether you're my sister or not, I'm investing in this company and I need allocation because of the people that are behind it and the product that you're serving. So then we had that conversation, and we actually had like a little bit of an argument because she was raising her second round. She just closed her, you know, there was the initial round. I forget how much it was. It was maybe like $900,000 or $500,000 or maybe $1 million. I forget what it was, but that was the one where we were investors in. And I think you were an investor in that one too. Then there was this round she just closed right before, it was in April, I believe, or March of 2022. And she closed $5 million. And I was like, great, I want my pro rata. Like obviously I want my, and more, right? And more, like we've been leaned in. She was like, yeah, sorry, not enough room. What? Excuse me, what are you talking about? And again, like I want to make clear, it's like they're separating me investing because you're my sister. Truthfully, like we're pretty ruthless. Like I'm here to support you. Like I don't need to put my money there. This was like, hey, listen, I know that this is going to bear returns. I want to make a good investment. And so her company's pretty awesome. It's unlocking charity dollars based on what you spend at different, at some of your perennial favorite brands, products, and then even within the crypto arena, like, you know, for people that are buying NFTs or people that are donating, people that are spending, whether it's to buy an NFT or spending crypto on things that are assets on the internet, to be able to unlock charity dollars that you can donate to a charity of your choice or of the choice of the shop or the provider. So it's pretty incredible. I couldn't be more bullish on that company.
Yeah. In fact, I think Anita wants to feature Sonia on a future version of this type of talk.
She's incredible. Done deal.
You are also recently on IMDb as an executive producer.
Yeah, right next to my favorite guys. Yeah, I mean, Fremont was special, obviously. I mean, you know, obviously you and Sonia are two of my favorite people ever. And it's the same thing, right? It's the same concept of what I was just talking about with guys to death. I'm here to, but like, I can support by maybe putting up an Instagram. But there's the business decision where it's like, these guys are just smart people. They have the Midas touch, and you know that it's going to bear return. Not even monetary. The fact that it even went to a place like Sundance is incredible in its first foray. So yeah, I've been able to explore so many different passions, I think, throughout this journey. As I've said, you know, there's Genies, there's the venture fund, of course, humans and being a GP there. And then there's been even just jumping into the entertainment space with yourself. I mean, that's one of my, I think, most incredible moments of this past year already, right? Is being able to sit there as an EP with you, watch Sonia produce an incredible, beautiful film, Fremont, which we had the privilege of watching at Sundance. And it consistently is getting just incredible reviews, as I've been seeing through all the different articles and publications that have been coming out. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes for sure.
Amazing. And, you know, we'll part with any advice for entrepreneurs or people who are starting out on the journey, who are thinking about starting out on the journey. Any advice?
Yeah, I think look, you're always going to have an excuse not to do it, right? Because it's not the comfortable thing. but with big reward, and I'm not talking about reward from a monetary perspective. I'm talking about reward from the actual experience of going through something so unique that is one-on-one to you. You kind of have to take a gamble. And so when people ask me what my biggest regret in life, I actually tell them I dropped out of college, not high school. I wish I dropped out even earlier. So I had even more years to be taking bets, right? And so it's always going to feel uncomfortable. It's always going to feel like not the safe thing and not the right thing to do. But truly, I feel like the most successful people, based on the experiences they have, are the ones that are the most risk inclined. So I highly encourage anybody, if you're on the fence or even 30% of the way there, just to be radical and change in your behavior and your thought for a second and go for it.
Beautiful advice. I couldn't have said it better. So Akash, I think this was amazing. You were your usual authentic self, and I knew it was going to be fun. I hope people on the bridge found it as fun as I did. And thank you for doing it, Akash. Anita, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Nickhil, you were amazing. I think you have another career going after your after GenePath to be a very, very great interview and asking all the right questions. And Akash, you have, I think, more fans in your club. I really appreciate the authenticity and sharing with us how you got involved with the sports teams and the celebrities. So more to come, and we wish you both amazing success in Genies and in GenePath Diagnostics. So thank you for joining us in our premiere show of Golden Globe. Bye-bye.
Bye.